What's going on, guys? Doomwake here, and we are back here with some more Tarkir Dragonstorm Standard content. Now, I know a question on a lot of your minds is, where should I spend my wildcards for the first week or first couple of weeks of Dragonstorm Standard? Because as of the time I'm recording this on Monday, and Dragonstorm is going to be released to the public tomorrow. So you might have some wild cards stored up and trying to figure out what the heck should I craft the very first day of Tarkir Dragonstorm. And I picked out 5 decks that I think would be some of the best for the early iterations of the format, because we don't necessarily know 100% what the full scope and impact of Tarkir is going to be on Standard. So these are kind of some more of the safe bets. I do have one wild card towards the end, but these decks are kind of already the best decks, and they got some pretty significant upgrades. So again, we're going to be starting off here with a deck that you know and you may love, you may also hate it, but it's Esper Pixie. Now, before we continue, I just wanted to say shout out to Moxfield for sponsoring the YouTube and basically just sponsoring me. If you guys want to check out any of these deck lists, I will put a link to my Moxfield page in the description down below. It has every one of the decks that you see here and quite a bit more, to be honest with you. I think right now there's about 25 decks in there. So if you ever want some inspiration based on decks that we built on stream, maybe built off stream, go check out the Moxfield. Again, the first deck that I have for you here is Esper Pixie. Now, there isn't a ton of new cards from Pixie, but there is one that I think is quite important here, and that is Sun Pearl Kirin. As you can see, it's a 2/1 flash flying. When it enters, you return up to one other target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. If it was a token, draw a card. That line of text is pretty important. So, Kirin is kind of more of the stuff that access to more stuff that we already have, right? Nurturing Pixie, Fear of Isolation, Town Ain't Big Enough. These are also a bunch of ways to bounce your own permanents. The reason that I think Kirin is a little bit special and a little more interesting in the Pixie decks is because of how well it synergizes with specifically Spiteful Hexmage. Where people have played Spiteful Hexmage in Pixie decks over the past couple of weeks, but they're only limited quantity, right? They play 1 or 2 copies to sometimes have some more aggressive draws. And now that you have Kirin, you can kind of lean a lot more into the Spiteful Hexmage aspect. For example, you go turn 1 Hexmage, put the roll on itself, and then turn 2, you go Sun Pearl Kirin, bounce the roll token, draw a card, and attack them for 3. So I think that specific angle will allow the deck to have a lot more aggressive starts, even more so than it had before. And to be fair, if you've played against Pixie, you may understand that the deck was already kind of aggressive. But because I'm leaning more into the Hexmage plus Sun Pearl Kirin, I wanted to max out on Scavenger, which is a card that people have been trimming over the past couple of weeks. Still 4 Fear, 4 Nowhere. And another big thing you'll notice is, what do we cut for the Kirins and Spiteful Hexmages? We're no longer playing stock up main, which is why you see I don't have the full sideboard, but I know that I would play 3 in the board for sure. And then other cards that got cut are just some one-ups like Spell Pierce, Defiled Crypt, stuff like that. So maybe not the most interesting, but again, if you're specifically looking for decks that will give you the best chance to win week 1, I think Pixie's a pretty good place to start. Well, if we talked about Pixie, we also have to talk about Mono Red. Now, this one I'm a little less convinced on, but I do believe that Quarry Steel Cutter is a huge upgrade for the red decks. Basically, it pays you off for double spelling. It's whenever you double spell, you get a 1/1 prowess, and then you can equip the cutter to it, and the cutter gives it +1/+1, trample, and haste. So very powerful on turn 3. You can go cutter on 2, and then turn 3, you play a 1 and a 2, or 2 1s. You get a token off the cutter, immediately equip it, go to attacks. So it pays you off for double spelling in your best draws, that's pretty good because you're double spelling very frequently in the red deck. The other thing, very importantly, that it does, it gives you more ways to trigger Valiant, specifically for Emberheart Challenger and Heartfire Hero, because the equip cost, you can manually equip this thing. It's only 2 mana, and 2 mana I don't think is that much in the grand scheme of things. Now, as far as what got cut for it, a lot of people are playing main deck Sunspine Links, or have been playing main deck Sunspine Links over the past couple of weeks. So that card has been removed. And I've also included the fourth copy of Swiss Beer because I've seen people have been trimming down to 3, but I wanted to maximize on 1-drops to give myself the best chance of double spelling with Cutter. And 4 Lightning Strike as well. Some people are playing 2 or 3, but again, with 4 Swift Spear, wanted to maximize the number of non-creature spells. And we also cut the 4th Nemesis. So if you're looking to build this deck week 1, don't have the full sideboard here, but I would recommend the 4th Screaming Nemesis and then either 3 or 4 copies of Sunspine Links. But yeah, I'm pretty sold on Quarry Steel Cutter. I'm excited to try this out and see how it performs, but I can't imagine it's going to be that bad. Next up for you guys, I have another deck that I played live on the stream when we did some Arena Early Access and thought had some pretty significant upgrades, and that is Jeskai Oculus. Now you'll notice there's quite a bit more Dragonstorm cards in this deck, and I do think they're all quite good. So the first one, this one's only an uncommon, so if you're spending wild cards, this is a good one to spend 4 of them on because it's only going to cost you 4 uncommons, and that is Glacial Dragon Hunt. Now, Oculus is an extremely powerful deck when you can discard Oculus on turn 2, reanimate it on turn 3, and then you just go from there, right? You figure it out. That's step 3 is profit. But what's important about Dragon Hunt specifically in the Oculus deck is it allows you to discard Oculus on turn 2 while also maintaining a relevant board state. Like you're still keeping the board clear. And what I mean by that is just dealing 3 damage to a creature on turn 2 while setting up for a turn 3 Oculus. And you didn't really have the ability to do that before. All of your discard outlets were Fear of Missing Out, Inti, sometimes you got lucky off a Spyglass Siren, or heaven forbid, one of your 3-mana ways like Steamcore Scholar or things like that. So I think Dragon Hunt is a huge upgrade to this deck. And one thing that kind of goes overlooked is how good Harmonize is when you have Oculus, because both Glacial Dragon Hunt and Winter Night Stories can be harmonized for free, and I mean that by just spending 1 mana or 2 mana, because they both have 4 colorless in their Harmonize, and tapping the Oculus, because this deck gets Oculus into play so often that it's very, very trivial for you to fulfill the Harmonize cost on these, on top of the fact that they are very good to mill over once you have an Oculus in play. So I had a lot of situations where I just reanimated an Oculus on turn 2 or turn 3, could pass to my opponent, manifest Dread, and then milled over a Dragon Hunt or a Winter Night Stories for the next turn. Speaking of Winter Night Stories, another card that pays you off for having Oculus, because draw, discard, that's good in the Oculus deck. I don't think I need to explain why. But what's important about this is it draws 3 cards, and drawing 3 cards, quite good with Prophecytic Memory. And the Harmonize on it, if you have an Oculus in play, you just tap 1 mana and the Oculus, flash this back, get 3 more cards off Profs. Really gives you a lot of ways to kind of like push through a whole bunch of damage once you have the Prophecytic Memory. Tersa Light Shatter, this one I tried a little bit later on, but was relatively impressed with it. It can be a little awkward at times because the attack trigger is not a May, right? So if you hit Oculus off of Tersa, like you have 7 cards, maybe you weren't planning on casting the Oculus that turn, so make sure you keep that in mind, because you may want to reanimate your Oculus pre-combat, and just to make sure that you can't hit it off Tersa, and again, depending on how many cards are in your graveyard, of course. But the discard 2, draw 2, very good with Oculus, and later in the game when you have a stock graveyard, Tersa can be a very powerful top deck because it just gets you free resources after that. And then the card that I was quite a bit higher on coming in, but maybe less high on as I played games with it, is Flamehold Grappler. And I thought this card was going to be very powerful with Helping Hand and Recommission, which it is. The problem is, a lot of the times, you're just going to have something better to Helping Hand or Recommission, whether that be an Oculus or sometimes even a Fear of Missing Out. It's good, and I think I would play a couple of copies, but I wouldn't necessarily craft the full 4 just yet, so keep that in mind. But yeah, Jeskai Oculus got some really good upgrades. If you want to check out this deck, YouTube video, I uploaded it yesterday, so by the time this goes out, it'll be 2 days ago, so check that out. Now, I mentioned I had 1 wild card for you. I actually may have misspoke. I might have 2. This is like half a wild card, so we'll call it 1.5. This is what I like to call Abzan aggro. And it is basically just the Golgari mid-range shell, cards that you're probably used to if you've played Golgari in the past. So Mosswitch Red Knight, Llanowar Elves, whole bunch of kill spells, Shieldred, Gix's Command, Sentinel. But we're doing a bit of a white splash this time for both Skirmish Rhino and Severance Priest. Now, the big problem with this deck is the mana base, and that is something that I'm going to need to spend some time on and work on. But I do think for now that this is a relatively good starting point for the mana base. If you need to mix and match the lands based on some wild cards, please be my guest. Don't feel obligated to craft every single one of these lands as a 4 of, because it's going to take some experimenting with the mana base, so make sure you keep that in mind. But I do think that both Priest and Rhino are 100% worth splashing in Golgari, because it just gives you a lot more reach when you combine Skirmish Rhino with Debris Beetle, just allowing you to basically, like, if you draw one or multiple of these in a given game, like over the course of a game, your opponent effectively starts the game at 15 life or sometimes 12 or something like that. And it's pretty easy to win the game when your opponent starts that low. And then Severance Priest as well was pretty nice for me, just because by the time you're playing it, like turn 3 or turn 4, even if they have a kill spell, right? If you play Severance Priest, they only have one kill spell. If they kill it with the trigger on the stack, they don't get a token, because the leaves the battlefield resolves, getting them a 0/0 because there's nothing exiled with it, and then the ETB resolves, you get to take a card. So they can't do that. So if they only have one kill spell, you usually get to take their kill spell. If you play this and they don't have a kill spell, you just take whatever the best card is. So I like this card quite a bit. I would consider playing the 4th copy, but I think 3 is a good starting point. And yeah, Siege Rhino is back, baby. That's all I have to say. And last but certainly not least, I couldn't go a video without giving Dragonhawk a big shout out here. This deck I did again upload a video with a few days prior with his Teamer version that I liked quite a bit. Now, this one is going to cost you some additional rare wild cards, so I left this as more of a wild card, because if you have the resources to craft it, consider it. But, you know, again, take this one with a grain of salt, because this one I believe in, but may need a little bit of work to make sure we can get this deck to where it needs to be. But I will say, the synergy that I was very impressed with when I played this deck was Teamer Battlecrier with Outcaster Trailblazer. It kind of lets you sort of storm off in a way where if you have Battlecrier in play, your Trailblazer costs less mana, and when it comes into play, it gives you a mana back. And every single other creature you play that has 4 power also draws you a card off the Trailblazer. So when you have Battlecrier and, say, multiple Trailblazers, you kind of just storm off and draw a whole bunch of cards. So that was pretty powerful. Surrak was phenomenal. I played a game where I cast Surrak, and I think I probably drew like 5 or 6 cards off of it. Very powerful card. And then the Cactus Folk combined with the Dragonhawk, I do still think the Cactus is the best way to give haste, especially with how many other 4-power creatures we're playing now between Trailblazer and Teamer Battlecrier and Surrak. So I think Cactus, it looks a little weird, but it's got reach, it's got ward too, and it just works so well with the rest of your cards. And then the other new card that we have here is Herd Heirloom. This one's a weird one because I drew it a couple of times, even though it's only a 1 of. It was relatively powerful, but the thing you have to realize is there's a good number of cards that it can't cast, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cards. And you might not think that that sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it is a decent amount. So maybe the second copy is good, but I'm comfortable with just 1 for now. But if you're into killing people with Dragonhawk, I think this is a pretty good place to start. And that, my friends, is going to do it. These are my 5 picks for week 1 of Tarkir Dragonstorm Standard. Again, Pixie, Mono Red, Oculus, I think those are kind of no-brainers. You can feel pretty safe about crafting those. The Abzan deck and the Teamer deck, take those with a grain of salt, as I said previously. But again, I cannot wait to get started with Dragonstorm Standard. I'm really excited about a lot of different decks, and can't wait to show you guys some more content. So thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Adios.